Good morning and welcome to Moments with Melinda. I am your host, Melinda Moulton, and today I have Helen Whybrow with me. Hi, Helen. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you, Melinda?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for being with us today. To my viewers, let me tell you a little bit about Helen Whybrow. She is the author of three works of nonfiction and is the editor of four anthologies. She is a visiting professor at Middlebury College and has taught writing at Breadloaf Environmental Writers Conference and the Iowa Summer Writers Workshop, among others. Helen and her partner, Peter Forbes, live on a farm known as the Knoll Farm in Fayston, Vermont. Her most recent book, The Saltstones: Seasons of a Shepherd's Life, is receiving national acclaim. Helen, thank you for being with me today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here.
There's much more that I could have said to you in the intro, but it would have taken up all of our time. Um, so, thank you for agreeing to be on my show. I want to start at the beginning. Um, I want you to share with us a little bit about your childhood and growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up on a small dairy farm in New Hampshire. My parents are both English, so I'm first generation American. I actually was a toddler when they came to the US, but I had been born here on one of their travels, so I'm not actually an immigrant. I'm a first generation American. But yeah, my parents settled in Plainfield, New Hampshire, next door to a classic 70s hippie commune, which really informed a lot of my young life, as well as farming also informed my young life. So we lived next door to Dana and Dennis Meadows, who wrote The Limits to Growth, and were systems thinkers and really pioneers of their time in terms of thinking about the limits of the Earth's resources. And so we grew a lot of our own food. We played pond hockey. We split wood. We milked cows. And around the dinner table, we'd talk about like leftist politics and um, all kinds of environmental topics. So Dana Meadows, for those who don't know her, she went by Danella Meadows. She wrote a fantastic syndicated column called The Global Citizen. She was just an incredible person. I really highly recommend tracking down her writing. She was a beautiful writer as well.
I also want to mention too, that how sorry I was here. I was so sorry to hear about the passing of your dad, Dr. Peter Whybrow. He was a neuroscientist and writer, and his work was so important in helping to uncover the mysteries of mood disorders. So I wanted to give you my condolences on the loss of your dad recently. So Helen, 24 years ago, you and your husband, Peter Forbes, moved to the Knoll Farm and you gave up a publishing career. Talk to us about those early days coming to Vermont and settling at the Knoll Farm.
Yeah, so I had, after college, I had started working as a book editor at Chelsea Green, actually, here in Vermont, and they were in Post Mills at the time, and I lived in Thetford. And then I moved on to Countryman Press in Woodstock, Vermont. And while I was at Countryman, it was purchased by W. Norton in New York. And so I ended up being an editor at Norton and running this little imprint called Countryman Press, which was all about natural history and the land and the state of Vermont and New England. And a lot of my closest friends and early writing mentors were from those years. And then Peter and I heard about this beautiful farm that was being given to the Vermont Land Trust and looking for new stewards. And we applied. And I mean, I joke, but it's only partly a joke that we kind of got this farm in an essay by writing an essay contest. So, it was a very strange real estate transaction. Very complex, a lot of promises we made to the Vermont Land Trust to keep the historic buildings and keep the land open and do agriculture and all kinds of things. And that became like really the tapestry of our life for the last 20, nearly 25 years, just because it's such a all-encompassing project. And I know you spoke with Peter a few earlier in the summer about kind of the side of the work that he has developed over those 25 years, which is really about bringing people together around social justice and land equity. And I built that work with him for many years and then got more and more into the farming side of things. And so have been really running the farm here for a long time. And primarily, we grow organic blueberries, and I have a big flock of sheep, which are probably my biggest passion and the subject of my latest book, The Saltstones. Seasons of a Shepherd's Life. So I still do editing, but it's mostly and writing, but it's mostly in the winter. I live a very seasonal life, kind of farming in the spring, summer, fall, and writing in the winter.
Right. And we're going to get into your book in just a second.
Yeah.
Now, you did compensate your family's income by writing books. Um, so
A little bit.
you did.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about Dead Reckoning and A Man Apart.
Oh, thank you. So, Dead Reckoning is the name of a book that I put together as I was leaving Norton and moving to the farm. It came out in 2001, I think. And it was such a fun project. I went to archives um, all over the world to read really old manuscripts from the 1800s, first person accounts of exploration to the Arctic, to all parts of the globe. Women who disguised as men to sneak into Mecca, and the first people to ride a bicycle around the globe when they had those huge back wheels and tiny front wheels. I mean, just crazy stuff. And some classics too, that people would recognize, and like Darwin is in there. And so I put together, I can't remember how many chunks of stories there are, maybe 40. Um, and I wrote long introductions. And so try to put together like an anthology of that age of exploration. And then the other book you mentioned is called A Man Apart. It's a biography, really, and a family memoir about our late mentor, Bill Copperthwaite, who was he was also a radical kind of thinker in terms of how one should live and how to live in opposition to business as usual in capitalism. But he designed and hand built this beautiful homestead on the coast of Maine and lived on about $5,000 a year. And we were great friends with him. He had written a book called A Handmade Life for Chelsea Green. And this new book was going to be more about his life, and we were going to write it with him. And then he died tragically in a car accident. And so we ended up writing it about him and for him. And it's got Peter's beautiful photographs in it. It was it was a wonderful project that really helped us sort of say goodbye to him.
Oh,
Yeah.
how beautiful. So to my
Yeah.
viewers, they can find Dead Reckoning and A Man Apart. Um,
Yeah, so they're both still in
so
print.
good.
You can find them on Amazon if you are so inclined, or ask your bookstore to order them. They
Ask
may
the
not
next
always be
book.
in the bookstore. Yeah.
So now you did say that you've spent the past quarter century of your life at Knoll Farm and you've grown this remarkable site. And it is a haven for visitors, a place for movements, and one that fosters social change, which sort of brings you from your childhood growing up in the sort of radicalized, progressive, hippie environment. Talk to us about this work about bringing people together into your farm and into your life. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been something that Peter and I are absolutely committed to, and have been from the beginning, is to make our farm be open access to the public. And then beyond that, actually convening people who stay in residence here to do learning journeys and workshops and their own curriculum oftentimes. And I think, it comes from, for me, but I'll speak personally, partly from feeling like a lot of farms are not accessible to the public, and people need to know where their food comes from and have that strong connection. And the more they can sort of see the working operations of a farm, the more sort of committed they are to that involvement of a community. So that's just one simple piece, is like, let's let people walk around and see the animals and pick the berries. And do whatever, go sledding on the hill or build a fire and have a campfire, have a picnic, you know. So that's a piece of it. Um, and just really the power of bringing people together, you know, whether it's neighbors and community or total strangers. So,
So how can my viewers, the people who are watching this show, how can my viewers become connected to the Knoll Farm and which really has become a national leadership, a nonprofit leadership place? How do my viewers get connected?
well, we do have a great website and we have summer concerts. We have a a great mailing list that kind of explains a lot of the philosophy and goings on here. So I would say just go on that website, knollfarm.org.
Knoll Farm,
Yeah. Yeah.
KNOLLFARM.org. All right, my viewers, as soon as this show is over, I want you to go visit that website. So now you just finished refurbishing the 200-year-old, I believe it was 200-year-old barn, and you held a wonderful event, which, and to thank all of those who helped in this effort. Talk about this extraordinary barn that you all just refurbished.
So the barn is at the heart of the farm, and like a lot of beautiful Vermont barns, it's you know, it's like a cathedral, really. They're so beautiful, and Vermont has a lot of them, and a lot of them are starting to lose their roofs and fall down. So, we and this one in particular, um, was it's actually been 100 years on this site, but it's much older because it was moved up here, which was a feat in itself, I can only imagine. But the foundation was failing and it was never up to code to doing any public events in there. So we just kind of bit the bullet and went for it and did a capital campaign and renovated it this past winter. And it really is the center of everything that we do in terms of both agriculture and convening people. So we dedicated it as the McLaughlin Barn. The McLaughlins were here for about 5 generations. They came over to Knoll Farm during the potato famine and classic New England story, really. So
Wow,
hopefully people will have that history and enjoy that place for a lot longer.
it's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Helen, you talk a lot about mysticism. And you express a desire to make something mundane come alive on a mystical plane. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, this is something that I talk about in my new book, The Salt Stones. I mean, I think when I first started thinking about writing a book about sheep farming and pastoralism and the the act of moving animals through a landscape and like what it taught me, I thought, you know, I constantly came up against my own censorship and my own self-doubt and feeling like, who's gonna want to read this as sheep farming? It's like so boring and dirty and like plenty of people do it. Like, what is possibly interesting about this? And I am somebody who's constantly asking like the big life questions and what is the meaning of life and what do things mean on a larger scale? And I read a lot. And it kind of while I was writing the book, it sort of came together for me when I reread a little book that I'd fallen in love with 25 years ago called The Serpent of Stars. And it's an old out of print book by a French writer named Jean Giono. And I saw in his writing how he takes very mundane, basic things and kind of makes them feel larger than life. And I think that empowered me to try to do the same thing and to think about how are the like, because I really revere hard work and I revere people who work with their hands and who do like the daily grind, you know, or I write a lot in the book about women through the ages who are the ones who kind of tend the hearth and keep everything going and tend to everyone and everything. And it's like it's unsung work, right? It's not glorified, and yet it's what makes the world go round. And I I really, as a writer, I like to elevate those ordinary things, both for the people who do them and just because I think there's so much beauty in ordinary things. So that was part of my project of writing this book. if that makes sense.
Well, they say that enlightenment is being intimate with all things. So it's beautiful to hear you speak about this. So let us move into your newest and nationally acclaimed book, The Saltstones: Seasons of a Shepherd's Life. It has been said that your book, The Saltstones, is the perfect tonic for these times. You never shut your eyes to what hurts. So please talk to us about this and tell us what inspired you to write this book and what are saltstones?
Thank you. What inspired me to write the book? Just the land itself and my deep connection to land and my love of this place that we all live in, northern New England, and all the seasons and the rituals that we go through as people who are connected to a seasonal landscape. And that's really where the book began. I think as I mentioned, this writer, John Gianno, and the Saltstones is a phrase from that book, The Serpent of Stars. I was reading the book and that phrase just leapt out at me, the Saltstones, because he describes how they're the flat rocks that the shepherds put out in the grass, and they put a handful of salt on these flat rocks for the flock. I still do this. Most all shepherds or give salt to their animals no matter where they go because they need it. And Giono writes about it as a consolation and a remedy for the ailing ewe or the trembling lamb or the sheep with a thorn in its foot. And I thought, that's what I want my book to be. I want my book to be a consolation and a remedy. Because I write a lot about the loss of songbirds, the threats of climate change, the way, as someone who has farmed in the same landscape for all my life, which now is almost 60 years, I've seen an enormous amount of change in turn and pressures from the warming climate. But I didn't want to write another book that's kind of doom and gloom and just kind of like feeling outraged or feeling frightened about what's happening. I wanted to write a book that made people feel more in love with the land and more inclined to pay attention to it and go and relate to it and sink into it. And so that's what I tried to do with this.
So much
Yeah.
you receive praises from the likes of Bill McKibben, Janice Ray, Hank Lenfer, Evelyn White, and Scott Russell. Sanders, an incredible group of gifted authors who, in the back of your book, have sang your praises for this book. I encourage all of my viewers to go to the local bookstore, order it if they don't have it, and get this incredible The Saltstones by Helen Whybrow. So in this book, you write about intertwining your life with the land. And I think you've made it pretty clear about this, but you also realized that the art of shepherding your Icelandic sheep extends far beyond the flock and the Knoll Farm. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so pastoralism is really ancient, right? So that our relationship with domesticated animals that eat grass,
Mhm.
sheep and goats, and also cows, it goes back like 12,000 years or longer. It sort of predates farming even. And so I got really captivated with this relationship that we have with animals and how we've co-evolved with them and how animals have co-evolved with the grass and how we're all in this like kinship and interconnection together. And so I started the book is essentially a set of stories about being a shepherd and the like very visceral hands-on things that happen and the deaths and the births and all the things in between. But it's also got these tangents that interweave in some science and history and lessons from pastoralism. And then there's also a lot in there about motherhood and daughterhood and family. My daughter and my mother sort of weave in and out of it as well. So it covers 20 years really. And I think this notion of being a shepherd and tending to things, whether it's land or animals or family, is something everyone can understand and cares about. That's really, I think, I think why the book has reached a much broader audience than just people who care about sheep farming.
You're here.
Yeah.
How many sheep do you have? Do you care for?
Well, it fluctuates a lot depending on the time of year. After the birth of the lambs, I'll have up to 90 sheep. And then throughout the course of the summer, I sell a lot of lambs to people who want to raise sheep. And then I really pare it down. By winter, I think right now I have like 40 out there. Um,
And you sell them for meat?
I sell a few for meat, like maybe a dozen every year go to the butcher because for one reason or another, I couldn't sell them for breeding.
Right.
But most of them go to people who want to start their own
Start their
flock and
flock.
work with the animals. Yeah, and I specialize kind of in using sheep for land restoration, and so a lot of people kind of get my mentoring on that and then go on their own and do all kinds of amazing things with their own flocks. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So you of all people understand the calamity we are living as our planet warms and our species dies. And you mentioned this as species are dying every day, and pandemics are horrifying our humanity. So talk to us about this time because your book does reference it, but in a very positive way. Talk to us about this time we are living in, and why is our species so unable to grasp the urgency that we're living in?
Wow, such a big question. I do believe that we it's very hard for us as individuals or a collective to grasp things at a large scale. And I think the way that things make sense to most of us is is on a much smaller scale. It's on a community or local or family scale. And I feel like somewhere along the way we've started to lose our some of our kind of just our neighborliness and our our etiquette and our importance around local communities. I think less so, honestly, a lot less so in Vermont than in a lot of other places. And I think we really need to hang on to that because the sort of divisiveness and animosity that people are feeling just neighbor to neighbor is is kind of where it all begins and is emblematic of like the bigger conflicts in the world. And then I think, there's so many other reasons why I think we're we're losing a kind of groundedness and way of life and things that make people give people a sense of belonging and give people a sense of well-being and health and purpose. And there are all kinds of reasons for that we probably don't have time to go into and that I'm certainly not an expert on, but I do feel like I I really in my book I really encourage people to get connected with what's right around them
Uh,
because I do think that it sounds so simple, but it actually can be quite profound and can really help people then be able to look out as in a more positive way.
in a more enlightened way, your book, The Saltstones, Helen, is a moving and beautiful testimony to a life well lived that is tempered to the now, the here be now. And it's really a book, that's close to the earth. Thank you for writing it. And to my viewers, it is available at all bookstores. I suggest you get it and you read it. It's a fascinating read, and I'm sure it will lift your heart. Now, you also have a Substack that includes so many wonderful stories, some that you couldn't put in the book. You have essays and musings about your life lived close to the land. How do my readers connect with your Substack, Helen?
Yeah, thank you for those kind words, Melinda. The Substack is just under my name. If you go on Substack and type in Helen Whybrow, or I think even if you type in the Saltstones, it'll come up. Um, I
And it's on
put
your website.
it's when I have a website, helenwhybrow.com, just for my writing. And you can get in touch with me there. You can check out my Substack. I I keep it all free. There's no paywall. Anybody can read anything that I write and post on there. And
I signed up for it, just so you know, and for your
oh, thank you. Yeah.
yours,
I
Helen.
just wrote about my dad dying. I just wrote about town meeting in the spring. I write about a lot of things that just are kind of happening, and it's quite informal, but
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Go to helenwhybrow.com. You and Peter host a lot of events at Knoll Farm. So so we learn about these events by going to the Knoll Farm website.
Yeah. Knollfarm.org. You can sign up for the newsletter, which we send out mostly in the summer when things are really hopping. We do a great summer concert series that's mostly outside. You can bring a picnic. They're very affordable. Great musicians come. It's there's all kinds of good stuff going on in Vermont in the summer, and I definitely encourage you to check out Knoll Farm if you have like, relatives coming up to visit you and you want to just take them somewhere beautiful and do something different.
And it's
Yeah,
located in Facein,
everyone's welcome.
Vermont, and it is beautiful. It's almost like it comes from another century. It doesn't, when you're up there, you don't feel like you're living in this century. It's amazing how it has this ancient feel. So are you working on another book, Helen, or perhaps another project?
I'm starting to, yeah. I'm kind of digging out from I lost both my parents this past year. My dad very recently, and he was in hospice here in my writing room actually. So I've just been kind of letting myself take some time, and I often I have to feel something really bubbling up before I commit myself to sitting down and writing every day. But I'm hoping that'll happen this
It
winter.
will, it will
Mhm.
happen. I
It'll
have
come
no
back.
doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
Losing one's parents and both of them in the same year is just not, you need to process that and
Yeah.
get your heart around that. So what words of wisdom would you like to give our species now, today, October 2025, as we're facing authoritarianism, the warming planet, income inequality, and all the incredible challenges that are in front of us?
Well, I'd say start by putting away your phone as often as possible, not always listening to the news or doom scrolling, getting outside and being on your own, sitting on the ground, like really like paying attention to the more than human world is a big piece of my advice, and noticing what's there and getting quiet. And then I think um really being kind to strangers and neighbors, and in whatever way is your way. Maybe you love to cook and you make soup once a week, and you think about like who in my life would really need a jar of this soup. Or maybe you're somebody who, likes to volunteer or just go for walks with people or check in with people. Like everybody needs a friend, Like our daughter did this incredible solo bike trip across the country 2 summers ago. She was 18 and she went by herself from the farm all the way across to the West Coast and then up to Alaska. And she had so many amazing stories about like she'd be exhausted, it'd be 90 degrees, she'd been pedaling all day in the heat, and she was like at a gas station trying to find something to eat. And I remember one story, this guy in a big pickup truck with like, you know, Trump stickers and stuff. He was just like he just handed her a $20 bill, just stuck it out his window and handed her a $20 bill so she could get something at the gas station. It was in the middle of the Great Plains somewhere. And she had so many stories like that about people who just lifted her out of trouble or the doldrums and they, I mean, and I only say that about the Trump sticker because I think that we're so used to feeling like blue and red don't help each other, and that is so not true. We have so much more in common than we have that separates us. And we we want to help each other. We do help each other. We should help each other more. And we just put all that crap aside, you know? Um, so that makes me hopeful when I see things like that because I am an optimist and I do fundamentally believe that everybody is a good person. So, I mean, and I think if we act out of that belief in people's goodness, then that goes a long way.
You are a special soul. I wish I had that gift of Zen to be able to do that during these times. So for that, I honor you. Thank you, Helen Whybrow, for taking the time to talk to me and my viewers. I am personally deeply moved by your work, your writing, and your depth of soul. And we're fortunate to have you here in Vermont doing the great work that you do. You open minds, you open hearts to what makes us human and what connects us to our Mother Earth. So thank you for being on my show. And to my viewers, don't miss out on reading this book by Helen Whybrow, The Salt Stones. It's so worth your time and it will lift your spirit. It'll make you feel a lot better about things. So, Helen, thank you so much. I can't
You.
wait to see you again. Give my love to Peter and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Melinda. Thanks so much.
Bye
You know
bye.
what you're doing.
Thank you.
Bye.